Hey, good afternoon, everybody. It is 6 minutes past the hour of noon o'clock. You're listening to Super Talk 99.7, the Chad Benson Show. I am decidedly not Chad Benson. I heard he came dressed like Santa Claus yesterday. Is that true?
Dude, he was to the nines.
Yeah, from what I could tell, not one of your cheap Santa suits.
No. It was not, man. And the boots were shiny.
Wow. Well, anyway, he's off enjoying his holiday, and I am in today all the way till 3 o'clock, and then I think Matt Murphy's still coming in today, so he should be along a little bit. Thank you very much for listening. We got a lot of ground to cover here today. It's the day before Christmas. This is your last shopping day. We're there. I mean, if you haven't gotten it by now, I'm really worried about you because you're behind.
Yeah. Instead of 2,000 people being in front of you at the traffic light, it'll be 3,000.
That's right. Hey, by the way, Ken Weaver, did you get your cookies?
I did, Brother Brian. Thank you.
We made a cookie delivery to the station early this morning, and those are Miss Cabana Wife's very famous chocolate chip cookies.
Dude,
they are legendary.
You and Cabana Wife are two of the most gracious people I know.
Well, you're
and I know
kind.
They're just cookies, but what a lot of people don't know is you guys do a lot more, and I just want you to know it's appreciated.
We're always glad to work with our good people at Super Talk. But they're not just cookies.
No, they're.
I'm telling you, these cookies are. I mean, people rave about these. It's a very unusual chocolate chip cookie, and there is a secret ingredient in it.
Is it magic?
The magic cookies. I don't know if they're magic or not, but there is a secret ingredient I'm not allowed to tell you, but they are quite tasty. I think you'll enjoy.
Oh, I know I will.
Yeah.
My family may not, but that's because they won't get any.
They won't make them home. That's right. Good to talk to you, Ken. We'll check in a little bit later.
All right, brother.
I want to get into the economy and talk about how the economy is growing. I think the Democrats, they're out there trying to talk down the economy. I heard it said that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was actually, saying that Trump was destroying the economy. If that's happening, I'm missing the signs, because all of the signs have been pretty good. The latest bit of economic news, if you haven't heard it, is that the economy grew by 4.3% in the third quarter, much more than was expected according to CNBC. Let me read some of this. The U.S. economy grew at a much greater than expected pace in the third quarter, boosted by strong consumer spending. People are spending money. Let me just say this about that particular statistic. When people spend money, it means they have confidence in the economy. A delayed report, it was delayed because of the shutdown. U.S. gross domestic product, a sum of all goods and services produced in the sprawling U.S. economy, expanded by 4.3% in the July through September period. We still got, the fourth quarter to go, which is usually a pretty good quarter because people are buying stuff for Christmas. The economists had been polled by Dow Jones, had expected only a 3.2% GDP growth in the third quarter. So that is incredibly good news. There was also a bit of good news in the report that this is not insignificant. This is important. Corporate profits have soared by $166.1 billion, or 4.2%, compared with the gain of 6.8 in the second quarter. So get this, in the second quarter, corporate profits were up $6.8 billion. In the third quarter, corporate profits were up $166.1 billion. That is incredible. That is amazing. The corporations are doing well, and when the corporation's doing well, what does that mean? They can hire people. They can build more products. They can take their profits and reinvest them. We want our corporations to make a profit. That is part of the free enterprise system. GDP, by the way, reflects the total of all domestic spending plus exports. Since some domestic spending is on imported products rather than things made in the U.S., imports are subtracted from the total spending to arrive at GDP estimates. When imports go down, as they did in the third quarter, the result is an addition to the GDP. This is pretty amazing. Here we go. This is a pretty strong story. From the Wall Street Journal. You ready for this? The U.S. economy keeps powering ahead, defying dire predictions. The unrelenting American consumer spins through a sour mood and a cooling labor market. U.S. economy continues to power through trade and immigration shocks of 2025, defying widespread expectations of a slowdown or even a recession and blowing past other developed countries. When Trump says we got the hottest economy, the hottest thing going on economically in the world, that's what he's talking about. We are on fire economically, really. Let's see, go on. One big reason Americans continue to spend on the economy, even though they have some lingering anger about some high prices. More on that in just a moment, okay? I think you're going to find this pretty interesting. AI investment and household consumption, particularly by higher income Americans, accounted for nearly 70% of the third quarter growth. Economists from one organization noted that after the third quarter report came out on Tuesday. We often talk about, and this is what I've always said, we often talk about the $30 trillion American economy being dynamic and a resilient beast. And the gross domestic product data from the third quarter was no exception, said an economist at RSM. The U.S. economy has defied many of the dire predictions from earlier this year, when President Trump took office with big promises to hike tariffs and curb immigration. Many economists slashed their forecast for economic growth and raised them for inflation and unemployment, and they were wrong. Listen to this quote. Almost everyone got Trump's tariffs wrong, though the most dire predictions were made before he backed off his most extreme policies. Instead of recession, the U.S. economy expanded in somewhat unexpected ways. The growth did not come from a boom in manufacturing, as Trump had promised. I think that's still on the horizon. It just takes a while. But rather from consumers at the top, emboldened by record-breaking stock market boom and the build-out data centers that add about $41 billion to our economy annually. So there you have it. We are seeing a lot of things about gas prices going down. Gas prices are part of this. Holiday road trippers are feeling some relief from the pump this year. The average price of unleaded gasoline in the United States has been below $3 a gallon for almost a month. Okay, that's nationwide average. I'm telling you right now, in many parts of the country, it has always been much less than that, including, for a little over $2 a gallon, you can get gas right here in Tennessee, $2.06, $2.11 if you really hunt for it. But it's way, way down from where it was. Fuel prices are down about 7% from a month ago, AAA data show, and have tumbled roughly 43% from the mid-2022 highs when it was near $5 a gallon. That's when we were in the midst of, if you'll remember, runaway inflation and high gas prices. When you lower the price of oil and gasoline, diesel, etc., you are reducing the cost of energy, and that ripples through the economy in a very, very positive way. Just over 40% of those polled said they plan to spend less this holidays. We'll see whether that turns out to be true or not. So there you have that. Now, with all of this good news about prices coming down in a lot of different categories. Gasoline prices are lower. Yes, people are still concerned. I don't want to discount the fact that some people are saying, well, have you seen the price of beef? Yeah, well, that's Beef prices have always been, and I come from Texas, trust me, I know a little bit about this. Beef prices, it takes a while for them to come back. They had to eradicate their herds for a lot of different reasons, and when they did that, they have to now build them back up. That doesn't happen overnight, so it takes a little while for beef to come around, but I think it will come around in very short order, but it's just going to take a little longer. See, Donald Trump is trying to do remarkably difficult things with the economy. He's changing the way our economy is structured in a big way. And those kinds of major transitions take a while for everything to kick in. Okay, so the tariffs. How do you avoid a tariff? If you don't want to pay a tariff price for an imported good, what do? You move the factory to America, right? That's going to happen. You know when it's going to happen? Next year. It takes a little while to buy the property, to build the factory, to get it all up and running, and to transfer all the operations over. That just takes some time, doesn't it? It will happen. Because companies have decided they're going to come back to America and they're going to build these products here to avoid the tariffs. So tariffs, I think, are working in a way that most people didn't anticipate they were going to work. So that's on the horizon. And you know what's else is on the horizon? Refunds. Because of the tax cuts in the big, beautiful bill, you're not going to have to pay taxes on social. You're not going to pay on tip income. A lot of people are going to see a big break from that. Here is the Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, talking about what's on the horizon with refunds. And when that money hits your pocket and hits the pocket of a lot of millions and millions of Americans, it's going to, we're just poised for a huge boom.
Well, look, I think Americans are going to feel it. And everything we've done in the past year is setting the table for a great 2026. And we inherited a mess. You had to stabilize costs. Real wages are up. I call it, I'm going to talk about it in my speech tonight, the 3 I's that cause the problems we've seen: immigration, interest rates, and inflation. Immigration, the mass unfettered immigration, 10, 20 million people coming across the border, push down working wages and cause housing prices to go up, rental prices to go up, cause the scarcity. President Trump has closed the border. 2 million people have gone home, so check on immigration. Bond market had the best year it's had since 2020. Interest rates are down, mortgage rates are down. We're starting to see life in the housing market, and rental rates are down about 5%. I expect they'll be down 10 or 15 from the peak. And then 3, inflation, we're working on that. The energy prices are down. Gasoline nationally is now below $3 a gallon. It's below $2 in a couple of states. So I think we're on a very good track on inflation. And I'm also the IRS commissioner as well as the Treasury Secretary. And I can see that the president's signature initiatives in the one big beautiful bill, and I tell you, he fought harder than anyone for these. No tax on tips, no tax on the overtime, no tax on Social Security, auto deductibility. That the bill was passed in July. Working Americans didn't change their withholding, so they're going to be getting very large refunds in the first quarter. So I think we're going to see $150 billion of refunds, which could be between $1,000, $2,000 per household. Then they'll change their withholding and they'll get a real increase in their wages. So I think 2026 is going to be a very good year.
I think it's going to be explosive growth. I really do. So I imagine you get a $1,000 or a $2,000 refund across the board. Many Americans will see big refunds because when they changed the tax structures and they decided they're going to tax certain kinds of income, nobody went back and changed their contribution. So they've got money coming back to them as a result of that. Big news there. So with money in your pocket there, and the fact that the economy is going to be poised to really explode as all of this investment start to happen, I think it's going to be a nice 1-2 punch. And by the way, going forward, you'll have more money in your pocket because of the lower taxes. When you have more money in your pocket, you can spend it. That's good for the economy. It's good for you. You get the goods and services you want, and Americans' economic engine comes back online. All you had to do was get out of the way. Our economy is robust and resilient if you don't stand in its way. And what Donald Trump has done is he's cleared all of the impediments to the economy, and it's getting better already and poised to be really, really good by about the middle of next year. It's coming. More on this in a moment. 21 past the hour of 12 o'clock.
Three years after a deadly road rage shooting in Nashville, the killer is still at large. We'll tell you what police want you to know coming up at 12:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Look forward to that. Always good to work with my buddy Ken Weaver.
Brother Brian.
I
Yes,
know.
sir.
I know. You got big plans for the holidays?
Just having family over and eating a lot and watching. We're going to watch Jimmy Stewart tonight.
Oh, yeah.
And It's a Wonderful Life, and then some other goodies. And then tomorrow we're going to open presents.
Yep. Well, I'm headed down to Birmingham. My sister and my niece lives in Birmingham.
All right.
And her family, and my sister's and her husband are gonna be there. So we're gonna buzz down for dinner tomorrow, and then buzz back. Anyway, I hope everybody has a good Christmas, and be very careful in your travels.
Yes,
we want you to arrive alive and get back here. So we start off 2026 in a good, positive way.
Yeah, you can keep listening and watching us.
That's right, because we're just fun to watch,
and we're real good looking.
Well, one of us is, and I'll let everybody determine who that is. We're talking about the economy, and I do recognize that the economy is not perfect for everyone. Dan Mattis had a great line this morning. There's the economy that they report on, and then there's your economy, and maybe you're not feeling it yet. I think you will. Truthfully, the one glaring problem, and the things that Democrats have found sort of a wedge issue on, is this so-called issue of affordability. I think that's going to fade in the new year, but housing is a problem. Housing for a lot of people is a real bad problem. They can't afford to rent. They can't afford to buy. The American dream of owning your own home is becoming elusive for a lot of people. And by the way, what's the cause of some of that? Immigration, illegal immigration to this country is part of that problem. And those houses, are more expensive because there's more demand for houses, because we let millions of people come into this country. They got to have a place to live, right? Okay, so that's part of the problem. But I think that the Trump administration is capable of getting at that. Here is Kevin Haslett, who works at the White House as the leader of the President's Economic Council, talking about the coming year and what's on the horizon. They understand housing is an issue, and they're going to be on it like a laser beam.
And then the other thing is that we've got lots of great new ideas that we're going to put before the American people this year to make their lives better. The president mentioned in his economic speech from over here at the White House that we've got everybody in the whole cabinet working on trying to get housing to be more affordable. We're going to have a big plan to announce sometime soon in the new year that's going to be really good news for the American people who feel like it's just not affordable to buy a home anymore. Don't forget that under Joe Biden, the average mortgage payment for the typical middle-class family who are buying for the first time a home went up by $14,000 a year. $14,000 a year because of inflation and higher interest rates. And we've got a plan that's going to make that go almost completely in reverse. Already, we've reduced that monthly mortgage payment by $3,000.
Well, let me ask you about that, because one of the ideas that keeps getting batted around and mentioned here in Washington and beyond is this idea of a portable mortgage. That a lot of people, if you got a 3% mortgage, you don't want to sell that house and go back out into the market, freeing up that housing maybe for more an entry-level buyer. Could that be part of the conversation, that portable mortgage? Yeah, we've got a list of things that we're going to present to the president. I expect, break a little news for you, I expect that most of us are going to be down for a big chunk of the week after Christmas at Mar-a-Lago, going through all the plans for next year. And definitely we have a big list of housing ideas that have been vetted very carefully by the cabinet secretaries to present to the president in a week or two. And we'll see which ones he picks. Yeah, so there you go. They're on it. And I think, knowing how Trump understands the economy and how he's, the one thing I love about the guy, and I have issues with Trump on some things, but I really love his policies a lot. And the one thing I love about the guy is his ability to look outside the box, to think outside the box when it comes to finding economic solutions. It is now 12:30 on Super Talk 99.7. Time for the news with Ken Weaver.
12:30 on the dot. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Got the full forecast coming up in 5 minutes. Well, 3 years after a deadly road rage shooting on I-24, the East Loop going westbound, The killer of Chris Sponhorst remains at large. Sponhorst was driving home when someone opened fire on his truck near downtown Nashville. Police believe the shooter was in a black Kia Optima that kept going westbound. Crime Stoppers offering a $23,000 reward for information. Meanwhile, police just outside of Philadelphia giving an update on yesterday's nursing home explosion.
There was originally 20 injured. We have 19 still hospitalized, one in critical condition.
Rescuers rushing in to pull victims from windows, stairwells, and elevators at the Silver Lake Nursing Home in Bucks County yesterday afternoon. Fire Department Chief Kevin DiPolito at the Wednesday morning press conference there.
Until we excavate that area and remove the walls and roofs that collapsed, we won't have any idea what may have occurred in there. We're hoping to make significant progress today.
Talking about the cause there. The trial of Kilmar Abrego Garcia will not start as planned next month. The charges could be dropped. A federal judge scheduled a January 28th hearing to review claims of selective prosecution. Garcia charged with transporting undocumented migrants after a Tennessee traffic stop. The court will decide if those charges stand or get thrown out. Metro Nashville Police brightening Christmas for hundreds of families today. Officers delivering food baskets to nearly 430 families and toys to about 1,500 children as part of the department's 64th annual Christmas Basket program. Children of families whom officers encountered on calls this year.
When they go into a house and see kids that don't have anything underneath the tree, and they're bringing these bags of toys in, and these kids just light up. And so for us to be able to make somebody's Christmas a little bit brighter.
That's the latest news. Weather is next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
It's 36 minutes past the hour of 12 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7 on this day before Christmas. Brian Wilson in for Chad Benson. You're listening to the Chad Benson Show. Let's talk a little bit about the swamp. We'll go to the swamp right away here. Yesterday, the Supreme Court dealt a blow to President Donald Trump by rejecting his bid to overrule a lower court order and allow the deployment of National Guard troops to the Chicago area over the objections of state and local leaders. Now, Trump wanted to send them in there, as he's done in other places, but of course the folks in Illinois would rather have crime and or evil on their streets than to actually solve the problem, so they fought it in the court of law legally. And what we ended up with was a matter before the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court went with Illinois. Today is a big win for Illinois and American democracy, says Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker on a post on X. An important step in curbing the Trump administration's consistent abuse of power. Okay. See, this really, it's a difficult thing. It's a very complicated legal concept known as posse comitatus. And it means that U.S. military troops, by and large, cannot be used for policing activities. Now, there are some circumstances where that can be done, where you go in and, for example, and say, I'm going to protect a building that is a federal building. That's okay. But policing activities by the military have long been frowned upon by the courts. U.S. presidents, according to CNBC, can deploy the National Guard under certain circumstances, but guardsmen are typically not permitted to engage in civil law enforcement. So this is a loss. But I tell you what the real loss here is. The real loss is to the people of Illinois. The real loss here is to the people in Chicago, where they have runaway crime. That's right. The Democrats would rather have runaway crime than solve the crime problem. Because, I mean, every time that they've done this, where they've sent in the military, the National Guard, they have seen crime drop dramatically. In D.C., by the way, there wasn't a fight over it in D.C. In Memphis, by the way, there was no fight over it in Memphis. I mean, I'm not sure all the Democrats in Memphis were pleased to have the National Guard come in, but I mean, you had the blessings of the governor in this particular matter. And by the way, crime is down dramatically. I read some statistics the other day about how many arrests there have been made, how many people have been charged with crimes, how many people, bad people with outstanding warrants have been taken off the street, how many guns from bad people have been taken off the street. So, I mean, it's been remarkable, astonishing, the turnaround in Memphis. It's happened in other places as well. So what really blows my mind about this whole thing is that the Democrats, they would rather have crime than solve the problem. But the Supreme Court has backed up Illinois in this matter. Here, speaking of courts, federal judges have struck down gender secrecy policies in California schools. Have you heard about this? A federal judge on Monday struck down California school policies that prevent schools from revealing a student's gender identity to their parents. There are some school districts, I think we even had one or two here in the Nashville area. Maybe I want to say Nashville Public Schools had this policy for a while. If a child says, "I want to be called," my name is Bobby. That's the name my parents gave me, but I want to go by Susan because I feel like I'm a female trapped in a male body. Some schools are not allowed to tell the parents about this, but not in California. Class action suit filed by California teachers and parents sought to overturn policies that barred K-12 educators from informing their parents when students use names or pronouns different from their assigned birth. San Diego U.S. District Judge Robert Benitez, a Bush appointee, ruled in favor of two Escondido Union School District teachers, Elizabeth Marabelli and Lori Ann West, who argued that the school's district policies flatly prohibit teachers from respecting the wishes of parents. The schools are not the parents. How in the world? I mean, boy, I tell you what, if this were to happen to my kid, I would be beyond angry that I was not consulted about this, not informed about it. Who do they think is in charge of that kid? They're not. Oh, I mean, they have some responsibility when the kids are in the school building. But you know what? At the end of the day, ultimately, the parent is the ultimate authority, and parents should not be kept out of the loop of something of this nature. And a federal judge in California has agreed that should be the way we look at it. Parents have the right to be informed. Student loan debt. You remember when, the Biden people were trying to pay off everybody's student loan debt? And, I kept saying, man, this is not the way it is. When you take out a student loan, it is an LOAN loan. You're supposed to pay back a loan. And the Biden people were just, trying to buy votes, and it didn't work for them at all. But they were trying to buy votes and talk about how it's unfair. So somebody takes out a student loan and they pay it back. What a sucker I was. I took out a student loan when I was working on my master's degree, and I paid it all back. I tried to make sure that my daughter didn't have any student loans, that she could get through college without having to take in a student loan. So I did the responsible thing. But now in the Biden world, you take out a loan from the government and you don't have to pay it back. It was nothing more than an attempt to grab votes from young people, and it was a bad policy. Now, listen to what Trump is doing. You ready for this? You're going to love it. Trump administration, according to PJ Media, is preparing to crack down on student loan defaulters starting next year. This will be interesting because you can bet Democrats are going to flip out about it. The Education Department confirmed it will begin withholding wages from borrowers who fail to pay their student loan debts. The first wave will hit in early January. About 1,000 individuals who defaulted on their student loans will see wage garnishment begin the week of January 7th, 2026. We expect the first notices to be sent approximately 1,000 defaulted borrowers the week of January 7th. The Education Department spokesman told the New York Post the notices will increase in scale on a month-by-month basis. They were given a 30 days head up about the plans to garnish wages. And back in May, the Trump administration moved to restore long-standing enforcement tools that had been sidelined, including the seizure of Social Security benefits and tax refunds from borrowers who defaulted on their student loans. Wage garnishments, officials indicated, would also return after being suspended under Joe Biden. What made me really mad about what the Biden administration was doing was that the loans that they were going to pay off a lot of them were for people who could well afford to pay off their student loan. They had the financial means to do it. Here's a little pro tip. Don't take out the loan if you can't pay it back. All right? All right. In other political news, I saw this story the other day and I thought it was very, very interesting. Political parties, after a loss or a win, anybody who's got their act together will do an after-action report. If you win, you do an after-action report to find out what did you do wrong. I mean, what did you do right? And let's do more of the right and less of the wrong. That's the plan. If you lose, it's all about how did we lose? Where did we make a mistake? What were the problems that we could not foresee or overcome? it's just called an after-action report, or some people call it an autopsy. Political parties rarely like releasing the autopsies of electoral defeats because they often become excuses or for score settling or agenda pushing or finger pointing. But the 2024 autopsy is one the Democrats can't touch with a 10 million foot pole for obvious reasons, they write in frontpagemag.com. The core election issue was the economy, and the Democrats had probably still lost, even if Biden had run again, and they had swapped out Governor Newsom or Gretchen Whitmer or Governor George Wallace. But you can't get away from the fact that they looked at it was the economy. But now the Democrats are saying we are not going to release it because we don't want there to be a lot of finger point. Well, what good is doing the autopsy if you don't widely share the results? Anyway, one way or the other, they continue to make mistakes. They haven't learned the lessons of the last election at all. Democrats are divided over how to retake the House of Representatives and the Senate. This story from Hill.com I thought pretty interesting. Democrat lawmakers are battling among themselves over whether they need to review the lessons. Well, no, they're not going to review them because they buried the autopsy. Some Democrats on Capitol Hill are unhappy about Democrat National Committee Chair Ken Martin's decision not to release that autopsy. Brian Schatz, who has locked down the votes to become the Senate Democrat whip in 2027, who is viewed as a frontrunner to someday become the Democrat leader, questioned Martin's decision not to release it. I'm not commenting on that, says Chuck Schumer when asked about it. And so some people think we should have a spirited, open-ended discussion. But you know what? When Democrats are in disarray, when a political opponent is in disarray, what you do is you stand back and do nothing. You stand back and say nothing. Let them roil in their disorganization. They are still really, really disorganized. From the Tennessee Star, Tennessee Representative Matt Van Epps, the new representative from Tennessee District 7, has gotten his committee assignments. Congratulations. He will be on the Homeland Security Committee. That's good. And also the Space Science and Technology in the 119th Congress. Because, he replaced Mark Green. And Mark Green was the chairman of the Homeland Security Committee. And so having Matt Van Epps in that, those are pretty high-profile positions for somebody who is a new member to Congress. So congratulations to Matt Van Epps as he starts to figure out exactly how Capitol Hill works. Good luck. I worked for 31 years, and I worked there for a lot of years on the Hill. I'm not sure I ever got it completely figured out. It is 50 minutes past the hour of 12 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Got some good news if you're leaving today or tomorrow for your Christmas destination. That's coming up at 1 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
It's 54, almost 55 minutes past the hour of 12 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7. Brian Wilson in for Chad Benson on this day before Christmas. So, Ken Weaver, before you run off and get ready for the news.
Yes, sir.
How's the traffic out near the airport? Because, there have been some days where they've had some real problems.
Let's look at it right now. I'm not seeing any issue at all, Brother Brian. It is looking good all over the metro area. The only slowdown I'm seeing right now is going westbound on the East Loop up to the Northern Split Airport. It's free flowing.
Yeah, we drove down to the station this morning to deliver cookies, and it was like no traffic whatsoever.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of people, they always say that the day before Christmas is a big travel day. Mm-hmm. I think it's sort of moved a little earlier in recent years.
Yeah, I think so too. I think since school is out this week, I think a lot of people left Friday and over the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Right now I'm seeing Briley Parkway, is kind of slow, but the interstates are clear. Yeah, and it always is.
Yeah.
But 40 by the airport, it's clear, man.
Well, you got your people going over to the the Opryland Mall.
Yes,
that's part of that, and people are doing last minute shopping. There's no doubt.
Oh yeah.
So, those places are going to be bad. But, I mean, getting into town and getting back home was – I haven't driven from, bucolic Watertown to the station in 37 minutes in years.
Yeah, I can't believe you made it in 37 minutes.
37 minutes, yeah. Well, we were picking them up and putting them down. But one way or the other, if the road is open, it means you go faster, right?
That's right.
That's the way I look at it, Okay, listen, I want to hit some other news from around the area. This is pretty, well, I think I'll do this story. I've talked about how we had this Supreme Court ruling that said you can't send the National Guard to Chicago. And I talked about how things are getting better around the country in places where they have cracked down, and tried to really, enforce the law, like arrest people, put them behind bars, adjudicate cases, and let a jury of their peers decide whether they're guilty or not. A lot of that had just fallen by the wayside. But now, under the Trump rule, things have changed a little bit. We got new U.S. attorneys making different decisions around the country. Here, listen to this. The U.S. murder rate is headed for a record 1-year drop. Now, we'll get the statistics not for a few days, but they get sort of an early look, and the people looking at them can say, well, if all of the information that's going to file the final report turn out to be accurate, then, it looks like we're headed for a real drop in murder. It's funny. It used to be when I first, years and years ago, started covering police departments in my hometown and some of the places where I worked before I got to the nation's capital. I was what they used to call a cop shop reporter, covered the police department. They would tell you, well, there's nothing you can do about murder. That's not true. If you take bad people off the street, and if you take guns away from bad people, if you prosecute cases, you can see that kind of violent crime go down. The U.S. appears to be headed for the largest 1-year drop in murders in history, according to a well-known crime analyst. That's the conclusion of crime statistics expert Jeff Asher, who says new national data show killings plunging at a pace not seen in modern record keeping. Last month, FBI Director Kash Patel said the 2025 homicide rate will be the lowest in modern history. Independent analysts such as Asher say the data strongly point in that direction. The data currently available through October show that murders are down. Are you ready for this? Nearly 20%. You talk to any police chief, he or she would love to see a 20% drop in the violent crime rate. Axios has reported that drops of nearly 20% in the murders in New York City And Memphis close to 28%. How about that? Wonder what happened in Memphis that caused that to happen. Chicago also seeing a significant declines in Los Angeles County. The numbers arrive as President Donald Trump made combating major crime a second-term priority. 1 o'clock time for the news with Ken Weaver on Super Talk 99.7.
One o'clock on the dot. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Got the full forecast in 5 minutes. And good news, if you're leaving today or tomorrow for your Christmas destination, ABC's Stephanie Ramos explains.
Today, Christmas Eve, and tomorrow, Christmas Day, are expected to be relatively quiet on both the roads and in the skies. According to traffic analytics firm INRIX, minimal traffic impacts are expected both days, making it one of the calmer windows to get to where you're going. Air travel is also lighter than usual, with fewer planes in the sky compared to the rest of the week.
Traffic deaths are down in Tennessee this year. Officials say drivers can't let their guard down. Fatal crashes involving teenagers and older drivers on the rise, even as overall numbers are declining. Speeding and distracted driving remain top concerns during holiday travel. Authorities urging everyone to slow down, buckle up, stay alert on the roads. Critics are blasting the Justice Department for how it's handling the release of the Epstein files, with hundreds of thousands of pages still yet to be made public. ABC News national correspondent Stephen Portnoy has the latest.
The Epstein files contain a large number of redactions, blacking out not just the identities of victims, but also the names of prosecutors and other federal officials, making it difficult, if not impossible, to determine who was saying what in internal emails. The top Democrat on the House Oversight Committee says one document released so far should prompt a new investigation into why a child pornography complaint about Epstein to the FBI seemingly went unanswered in 1996.
A new warning for those who are not repaying their student loans. This coming from the Trump administration. Here's ABC's Selena Wang.
This could impact millions of student loan borrowers who are in default. So starting in January, some of them can see their wages garnished. That means payments taken directly out of their paychecks. But the Education Department says this won't start until they've received sufficient notice and opportunity to pay back those loans. So some warning out there is to do that quickly and to do that fast.
Fewer Americans were standing in the unemployment line last week. Employment analysts were anticipating a slight rise in jobless filings, but in the week ending December 20th, the figure fell by 10,000 to 214,000 claims. In all, about 1.9 million Americans are getting state unemployment benefits, actually an increase from the week before. Happy 100th birthday to a soft-spoken bear who has captivated kids' imaginations for a century.
A bear named Pooh? I believe that's you.
Christmas Eve, 1925, the very first Winnie the Pooh was published in the London Evening News, inspired by a stuffed toy A.A. Milne bought for his son. A bear that doesn't scare anyone, like other fairy tales.
Oh, bother.
One that just likes to play and eat.
Perhaps I could borrow some honey?
The franchise was bought in 1961 by Disney, now ABC's parent company.
Silly old bear.
In revenue, that 100-year-old bear holds his own with Mickey Mouse, kids still wanting his cuddly toys. Wayne Cabot, ABC News.
That's the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Hey, everyone, it's 6 minutes past the hour of 1 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7. It's hour number 2 of the Chad Benson Show. Brian Wilson in the chair today for Chad, who will return after the holidays. And I understand he came into work yesterday dressed in a pretty impressive Santa Claus suit. I mean, it was apparently something. I did my own dressing up for the holidays. I don't know if I've told this story or not, but my wife had a party for her work, and part of the deal was you had to go downtown Nashville, and you had to dress up as a character from a Christmas movie or a Christmas character. And so, yes, ladies and gentlemen, your friend and radio buddy went downtown dressed as Buddy the Elf. And it was interesting. The reactions of people. I'm never doing this again, but I embraced it and went down there to have fun and just decided, okay, this will be, everybody's going to be dressed up. So I'll be, among other, but it was amazing how many people wanted to have an interaction with Buddy the Elf.
Well, of course.
He's
a great guy.
Well, yeah, he is, and I guess because I'm a tall guy, I sort of look like a real Buddy the Elf. Now, you look at a short Buddy the Elf, it doesn't work.
No, it just looks
too
like
elfin.
It's too elfin. Exactly, like I couldn't pull that off. Somebody would grab me and stick me back in their garden.
Yeah, we had a Santa Claus, and we had a Grinch. We had reindeer.
Awesome.
I mean, we had a whole bunch of them. We're walking down the street, and people are amused, and then but they would lock in on Buddy the Elf.
Yes, sir.
And they'd want to have their picture took right there on Lower Broad.
Right.
And
look who we saw on our trip to Nashville.
Yeah, we saw Buddy the Elf, and so I had, of course, Buddy the Elf likes maple syrup. And Pop-Tarts, so I had both. And when people would stop me, I would say, "Would you like a Pop-Tart?" And they would take my Pop-Tart. They would take my Pop-Tart from a complete stranger off the street. So, but it was a lot of fun. Buddy, I've been asked to reprise Buddy.
Yeah.
And I have politely declined. Buddy is retired. Really something.
That's too bad.
But I got to tell you, trying to walk, we were staying in a hotel downtown, so we didn't have to drive back, and late at night. And I can't tell you the number of people who would drive by and honk, "Hey, Buddy!" or somebody on the street, "Hey, Buddy, how are you, Buddy?"
Did anybody say, "Hope you find your dad, Buddy"?
I walked up we went to a bar, and there was this sort of diminutive, very attractive young woman sitting at the bar, but she looked at me and she was smiling, and I walked up to her and said, "Are you an angry elf?" Have you that movie, by the way, it's not Christmas until I watch it. We sat down and watched it the other night.
Yeah.
That scene in the boardroom.
Oh, yes.
With the little person is about the funniest thing that I every time I see it, I just bust out laughing.
Yeah, because he's just innocent.
Yeah.
He doesn't mean anything by it.
No, but he gets beat up pretty bad.
Yes, he does. Peter Dinklage played that role.
Yeah, and brilliantly.
Yes.
Brilliantly, because he's sort of a gruff character to begin with, and he comes across that is comedy perfection in my mind. I love that so much. Anyway, we apparently are going to watch, what is it? We got to watch Home Alone.
Oh yes. Classic.
I understand that's on our evening viewing tonight.
Yeah, we've already watched that once. I'm sure we'll watch that at least one more time. Great movie.
That's right. All right. By the way, I want to mention something. I did a thing for our church Christmas program the other day. It's a commentary that Paul Harvey used to read every Christmas. And it's called The Man and the Birds. And as we close out the 2:00 hour, if you don't mind, I'm going to try to read that for you because I think you'll like it. It's a very interesting. I'd never heard it before, actually. It was brought to my attention and asked would I do a dramatic reading of it, and I did. And I'd like to do that for the audience. So if you're around, I don't know, 2:35 or so,
yes,
I'll be reading The Man and the Birds as delivered year after year after year by the late great broadcaster Paul Harvey.
Interesting. Can't
and
wait.
You'll get that without the good day. Good day?
Good day?
Good day? Yeah, by the way, you know what that was all about? I found out what it was all about from talking to somebody who watched him do it. When you're doing a network broadcast, you have to hit your marks, your time marks, right on the money. And so he would back time the show, but when you get to the very end, you might have a second or two,
right,
where you're a little short. Someday the good day would be very quick. Someday there'd be a long pause for the good day. It was just his way of stretching it out to right straight up at the top of that particular minute. I think it was like 5 after the hour.
Awesome.
He would wait until the clock went tick, 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 tick. Good day. And that was his last word. So.
Oh, man, I miss those days in radio, man. Paul Harvey, news and commentary. Remember, he'd have the big 15-minute at noon, and then in the evening, he would have another wrap-up in the evening.
Oh, I liked it. The rest of the story. That was good stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Got stuff to cover here. I want to talk about immigration. There's a new congressional report out that is actually raising eyebrows, and they're basically saying the things that you and I both know, and things that I've been saying all during the Biden years about immigration and how we're going to rue the day that we opened our borders. We're going to rue the day that we just let people into our country willy-nilly, not knowing who they are, not knowing where they're from. And you know what's really, boy, I mean, this makes me so mad, because what really makes me upset about this is the reason that the Biden administration did it. They were trying to pump a bunch of people into places like California, where they're losing population to red states. They needed to replace those people for the upcoming census so they didn't lose congressional seats. That's what it was all about. So for crass political purposes, they opened up the borders, said, come on in. They didn't care about those people. They cared about losing political power. It was a power move is what it was. It was always that and nothing more. You can't, they painted it up to be, well, we just care about people who are struggling and we want to open our doors. America's always been open. Well, we are, but you got to follow the rules. So what we're learning is, as we look back at that, is that a lot of those people who came through were actually bad actors. Listen to this story from redstate.com. More and more of the misdeeds of the late and unlamented Biden administration are coming to light, and plenty of those misdeeds have ominous possible outcomes. In the latest such report, the U.S. House of Representatives Committee on Homeland Security has released an updated report on known and suspected terrorists allowed to enter the country during the 4 years of the Biden administration's non-enforcement of our borders and our immigration laws. It's not a happy read. The U.S. House Committee on Homeland Security has released an undated report highlighting terrorism threats to Americans. It did so after holding a hearing Tuesday in which the director of the National Counterterrorism Center, Joe Kent, testified that the NCTC had identified at least 18,000 known or suspected terrorists who were released into the United States during the Biden administration. 18,000. The Center Square noted that the NCTC has also added roughly 35,000 narco-terrorists to the federal terrorist screening data set since he's been in office. What can possibly be good about this? There's no way you can spin this in a positive way. There are 18,000 known or suspected terrorists released into the United States. We saw what 12 terrorists with box cutters could do on 9/11. And also you say, well, where's the evidence that there's been a problem? Oh, the story has lots of them. You ready? Why should we be concerned about here? Afghans continue to be arrested for committing crimes in the U.S. Recent examples include 3 Afghan men charged in 1 week with terrorism-related crimes. One shot 2 National Guard members in Washington, D.C., killing one. Another was apprehended by Texas Department of Public Safety officers in Fort Worth, accused of plotting a 9/11-style terrorist attack. Another was arrested in Virginia, accused of supporting ISIS. Where did they come from? Thank you, Joe Biden. Last month, 3 Muslim men were arrested in Dearborn, Michigan, charged with conspiring to provide material support to ISIS and possessing firearms to commit a terrorist act on behalf of ISIS. The FBI also arrested 2 teenagers in New Jersey last month for their role in the alleged plot, the report notes. In October, a Palestinian man arrested in Lafayette, Louisiana, for his alleged role in the October 7th, 2023 Hamas terrorist attack against Israel. He's a member of a Palestinian National Resistance Brigade, I can't even begin to say this, the Martyr Umar al-Qasim forces. The Department of Justice said he entered the United States on September 12th of 2024, providing false information in his U.S. visa application relating to his involvement with a paramilitary operation. Oh, I wish that were all, but wait, there's more. In September, a Pakistani man was sentenced to 9 years in prison for attempting to provide material support to ISIS, including planning to attack New Yorkers on a pedestrian bridge in Queens. Also in September, 2 Muslim men were arrested in Salt Lake City, charged with aggravated arson, threat of terrorism, and possessing a weapon of mass destruction in connection in an attempt to blow up a Fox 13 vehicle. I mean, these are the kinds of things that are starting to crop up as a result of Joe Biden's open border policy. I truly pray that our FBI can stay one step ahead of these folks, that our intelligence community can stay ahead of them, that the FBI can stay ahead of them. But if something happens, God forbid something happens, there will be absolutely no doubt who is responsible for this. It won't be the current administration. It will be the administration that let all these bad people into our country unchecked. How in the world did anybody think that was a good idea? It just baffles me. It just blows my mind. Kristi Noem has offered a $3,000 bonus to illegal migrants if they self-deport by the 31st. You just got a few days. They had offered $2,000. We'll give you $2,000 and a free plane ticket if you want to self-deport. And if you do that and you want to come back and do it legally, then you can. However, if you don't take advantage of this, we're going to hit you hard between the eyes when we find you, and you will never be allowed back into America. There is more that has to do with immigration. I want to get to that in just a moment. Right now, it is 20 minutes past the hour of 1 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7.
3 years after a Christmas Day road rage murder on I-24 downtown, the killer's still out there. Hear what police want you to know. That and more coming up at 1:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
There you go. We got Bill K into the Christmas spirit finally there this afternoon. Hey, that's a good one. Holly Jolly Christmas. That's Burl Ives, is it not?
Burl Ives.
Burl Ives. Bring me some Burl Ives. That's right. I like the old classics.
Me too.
I mean, I love the new stuff as well, but I mean, there's just something very, I don't know, comforting about some of the old stuff.
Takes you back to whenever you didn't have any worry in the world. Your parents worried about all that for you.
That's right. You know, we were blissfully unaware, weren't we, as
Yes,
children?
we were.
Yeah, I know. I had no idea what was going on. I don't think I really became conscious in any significant way till I was at least 15 or 16.
Yeah.
We're talking about immigration issues and how bad they are, and how, we are poised. I mean, here's what I'll say. In some parts of the world, they have canceled New Year's Eve celebrations. I want to say Paris is the one that comes to mind.
Wow.
They just canceled it because they can't guarantee the safety of the people in France who want to go attend that thing. And, I do think that New York City is pretty good about managing those kinds of things. Their police department pretty good about managing these things. And security is a thing that they're pretty good at. And we have a thing in this country called national security events where the government steps in and helps the local entities with security. And so I think the ball drop at Times Square is a national security event. The Super Bowl is a national security event. But I really worry about the number of bad actors who are in this country who want to do us harm. They're in this country for one purpose only, not to take advantage of the greatness of this country and try to make a new name for themselves. They came here to hurt us, take advantage of this opening that was there. And they're lurking, seeing what kind of damage they might do. And, I would just say, for me personally, I'm not going anywhere on on New Year's Eve. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to stay home. I just don't know that we have a great deal of confidence that we can find all the people who are out there who want to do harm, and they're going to be looking for things like New Year's celebrations and large gatherings, soft targets, to carry out their mayhem and their evil. Here in Tennessee, a twice removed illegal alien got 24 years for drug and firearm crimes. An illegal immigrant from Jamaica, according to the Tennessee Star, received over 24 years in prison after pleading guilty to drug and firearm crimes last week. Courtney Sterling, 45 years old, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to distribute 50 grams or more of methamphetamines, possession of firearm as an illegal alien, and aggravated re-entry. Once he completes his prison sentence, he will have another 10 years of supervised release. I don't know if he's here illegally. Why don't we deport him after he does his time? Law enforcement obtained a search warrant for his address and discovered 11 pounds of methamphetamines, 2.5 pounds of cocaine, and firearms. And he was been removed from America twice before. And after making bond for these criminal charges, Sterling became a fugitive. He did not appear in court. Again, why is this person still in this country is the question I have. Here's another person I have the question about, the so-called Maryland dad, the Democrats call him Abrego Garcia, Kilmar Abrego Garcia. The trial has been postponed. Federal judge in Tennessee, according to the Epoch Times, overseeing the criminal case involving El Salvador national, longtime Maryland resident Kilmar Abrego Garcia, has canceled a trial date for his human smuggling case, pending a decision on whether to dismiss the case entirely over the defendant's allegations that he is the subject of a vindictive prosecution. How is it a vindictive prosecution to arrest somebody who they believe they can prove was smuggling people in this country here illegally? Trial date been set for January 27th, but U.S. District Judge Waverly Crenshaw of Nashville, Tennessee, ordered a change in that proceedings to an evidentiary hearing for the government to make its case against the allegations on January 28th. They're going to make the case, they're going to try to make the case that it's a vindictive prosecution. I don't think it's vindictive. I think they can prove what they say they can prove. I mean, the fact of the matter is the man violated the law. Why is it vindictive to prosecute somebody who allegedly violated the law? Let a jury of his peers settle it, not a judge from Nashville. 30 minutes now past the hour. Time for the news at 1:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
I have no board, so Ken, you're just going to have to go into it.
1:30 on the dot. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Got the full forecast coming up in 5 minutes. Getting some breaking news right now. The New York Post and Fox News reporting that the Department of Justice says it has turned up 1 million more possible Jeffrey Epstein files from the Southern District of New York. Something we'll be following for you today. Also here in Nashville, Metro Police still searching for the person who shot and killed 37-year-old Chris Sponhorst in a road rage incident on I-24 West Christmas Day 2024. Channel 4 spoke with Sponhorst's widow, who still holds out hope for justice.
The guy's lane ended. Chris didn't see him, and he shot at his truck at least 9 to 10 times.
Can you imagine having to come and call for your kids and tell them that their daddy died on Christmas because he didn't see a car? It's not that serious.
My kid is not the kid he was before his dad died. I mean, you stole somebody's best friend.
Investigators say Sponhorst's blue Ford F-150 was hit by gunfire near the James Robinson Parkway exit. The suspect drove away in a black Kia Optima with chrome trim. A reward of up to $23,000 is offered for tips to Crime Stoppers. Well, a Tennessee federal judge, as you heard Brian just mention, has delayed the trial of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the man who was mistakenly deported to his home country, El Salvador, then returned to face human smuggling charges stemming from a 2022 traffic stop here in Tennessee. The human smuggling trial was originally set for January 27th. Instead, an evidentiary hearing will take place on January 28th to decide if charges should be dismissed. And a salmonella outbreak linked to raw oysters has sickened 64 people in 22 states, including Tennessee and Kentucky. The CDC says most patients reported eating raw oysters before falling ill. 20 people have been hospitalized. No deaths have been reported. Health officials urging consumers cook oysters thoroughly to avoid infection. That's the latest news. Weather is next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
into my system, and I can't. I don't know what to do. Can you hear me okay, Bell?
I can hear you, but I'm trying to get rid of this extra audio.
All right, good. I'll just turn you down for now and hope everything goes well. We are having some gremlins in our system. Some angry elves pre-Christmas elves have attacked our board, and bear with us while we try to work through these problems. I want to start this half hour by talking about the Epstein files. I know many of you out there were looking forward to getting a look at the Epstein files, and you feel like, well, we're not getting the whole story. I've always felt this about the Epstein files. Certain parts of the Epstein files were always going to be held back because they were classified. Certain of the Epstein files were going to be redacted because there is a requirement that you protect the victims of these of Jeffrey Epstein. And so when all of these documents started to come out, my sense of it was it's not going to satisfy everyone. Because you're going to say, well, what's this thing that's been redacted? Why didn't you give us this? Why didn't you give us that? And as that stuff is continuing to percolate, you got to wonder what's causing all that problem. What's going on with that? So as the files come out, I don't think most Americans are going to be ready to accept what is, that this is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I think people are going to be very skeptical. So I don't know what benefit we get from releasing all these documents, but they have been released now, and let's just go through what we have found out. We found out pretty much that Donald Trump had some contact with Jeffrey Epstein in the 90s. He's admitted that. He said, I didn't do anything wrong. And when I realized, what was going on with this guy, and he had some bad behavior on the part of Jeffrey Epstein, I ended my relationship with him. And in fact, he kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago. So that's what Donald Trump's position has been so far. I've seen nothing that countermands that or contradicts that. It is, as it appears to be, that he actually, did not have much contact with him since the 90s. But the documents that have come out have not been very good for Democrats. The Democrats were pushing hard. Oh, we need the Epstein files. We need the Epstein files. We need the Epstein files. So far, it's been the Democrats who've been hit hardest. Democrats' push for Epstein files boomeranged with Clinton featured prominently throughout. We're talking about Bubba. Be careful what you ask for, writes justthenews.com. The most recent disclosures posted on Friday, a blowback on Democrats who sought concrete implication of Trump in the files. Democrats pushed for the release of document delegate Stacey Plaskett in a swath of 2019 text expression hearing on Trump, in which a tranche of formerly classified documents, it's been revealed that the first known opportunity to investigate and possibly charge Epstein with child pornography was during Clinton's time in office. But his Department of Justice declined to proceed. Why? Because he and Bill Clinton were close. The latest bunch of documents, the document drop on Friday, reveals a previously unacknowledged 1996 complaint to the Federal Bureau of Investigation alleging that Epstein possessed and distributed child pornography. That was filed by Maria Farmer, an artist who worked for Epstein in the 1990s. Farmer claimed that Epstein stole nude photos she had taken of her underage sisters, 12 and 16 at an age, for her artwork, which they allegedly sold or distributed. The complaint also described explicit images of children in Epstein's home, and a modeling book of child pornography kept in his safe was filed during Clinton's presidency but not pursued. Why would you not want to pursue a case like that? Why would you not think that child pornography was something that you might want to investigate? Why did they not have any interest? Why were they not curious? Why did they not want to dig further? Oh, I think we all know why. Clinton shut it down. The most recent disclosure of the Epstein files released by the DOJ involved more than 13,000 files, including thousands of documents and hundreds of images related to investigations into Epstein. The materials posted on the DOJ's Epstein Library website feature photographs of Epstein with various prominent figures like Clinton in multiple settings, evidence images like FBI boxes and other investigative records, though potentially significant portions remain heavily redacted. Additional batches followed in the days after the initial release, including photos, emails, loose references to individuals like President Donald Trump in earlier flight contacts, as well as a passport with Epstein's image under a different name. The release was made to comply with the Epstein Files Transparency Act, but DOJ withheld thousands more filed and continued rolling disclosures and ongoing reviews to make sure that the victims were protected. The disclosure also featured many previously unseen images of Epstein socializing with other prominent figures like Michael Jackson, Mick Jagger, Bill Gates, Diana Ross, alongside evidence like handwritten FBI notes detailing his predatory methods and his recruitment of minors. While many Americans were hoping for revelatory and explosive new details about Epstein's client list, virtually no new major evidence of criminal wrongdoing by high-profile associates was revealed, no comprehensive clients list or blackmail materials, and much of the content reinforced social connections without implicating any additional accomplices. So, there. Now, do you believe that we've seen it all? There's apparently some stuff still trickling out, but they have to go through and be careful. They absolutely have to protect the victims in all of this. Here's another version of that story from PJ Media. Bill Clinton FBI. The Bill Clinton FBI buried Epstein bombshell allegations. According to a report from the New York Times, Bill Clinton's FBI said on bombshell complaints about Jeffrey Epstein for nearly a decade. This revelation has me wondering whether Bill Clinton's cozy relationship with the pedophile financier played any role in that inexcusable inaction. Well, of course it did. Of course it did. Bill Clinton was in office. His buddy Jeffrey Epstein, who has been acting badly, all these complaints were filed about it. Any other person in America, there would have been an FBI investigation and charges brought. But not if you're Jeffrey Epstein and you're Bill Clinton's buddy, and Jeffrey Epstein has damaging information on you. I think it's pretty clear why they buried the allegations. And then there's this thing, you may have seen it. You say, well, what about Trump? That letter. I saw it out there. It was reported. I think I saw it on Drudge of all places. They put it out there. A letter that Jeffrey Epstein was purported to have written to another inmate in the prison system, in which he suggested that Donald Trump, like me and like the guy was writing to, likes the young girls, and you know, however, he didn't get popped and we're in jail. And well, you know what? Apparently, that letter is a complete fake. Listen to this from the NewYorkPost.com. A salacious letter purportedly written by Jeffrey Epstein that directly referenced President Trump is fake, the Justice Department said Tuesday. The FBI has confirmed that this alleged letter from Jeffrey Epstein to an individual, another inmate by the name of Larry Nassar, is fake. The DOJ wrote on X hours after it pledged it was looking into the validity of the alleged letter. Epstein purportedly wrote the letter to fellow jailed sex offender Larry Nassar, the disgraced USA gymnasium doctor who is serving hundreds of years of prison for abusing girls under his care. The Justice Department cited several reasons for its conclusion, including the handwriting didn't match, an incorrect return address missing Epstein's inmate number, and a Northern Virginia postmark dated 3 days after Epstein's death at a New York Metropolitan Correctional Center. The fake letter serves as a reminder that just because a document is released by the Department of Justice does not make the allegations or claims within the document factual. Nevertheless, the DOJ will continue to release all the materials required by law. So here's what the letter said. You ready? I got the whole thing here. Dear LN, begins the fake handwritten note. As you know by now, I've taken the short route home. Good luck. This was after his death, right? The author then goes into creepy detail about the two convicts' predilections for underage girls. We shared one thing, our love and caring for young ladies and the hope that they would reach their full potential. At one point, the letter says, our president also shares our love of young, nubile girls. And when a young beauty walks by, he loved to grab, I can't say that word, whereas we ended up snatching grub in the mess halls of the system. Life is unfair. Yours, Jeffrey Epstein. Complete fake. It's fake news, absolutely. I mean, the handwriting doesn't match. There's real question about where it was sent from. A Northern Virginia stamp, postal stamp. That should have been a giveaway right there. Oh, but people were quick to run with it. People were quick to make the allegation against Donald Trump. Breathlessly, oh, we got him now. Look at this. No, you don't have him. You don't have him at all. The Jeffrey Epstein thing, Lord knows, I do understand why there is interest, and I do understand why many people, clearly, they've been covering up for this guy since the days that Bill Clinton was the president of our country. So I understand why people feel like, something's not right about that. I've always suspected the man had intelligence connections, and a lot of things got swept under the rug because of that. One way or the other, we'll never really find that out. The bottom line is, it looks really bad for Democrats. So far, I've not seen anything that suggests that Donald Trump has told us anything but the truth. I knew him. He flew on the plane. We've actually had some people who were in that orbit. Some of the girls have come forward to say that they never had an encounter with Donald Trump. The same cannot be said about Prince Andrew. The information coming out in these files is very damaging to the prince. So yeah, it's not going well for Democrats. It's not going well for the prince. But I will tell you that so far, I don't see that he's laid a glove on anything about Donald Trump. Now, look, is there something else out there looming? Yeah. Well, it takes days and days to go through this many documents. Will they find something? Maybe. But so far, it just doesn't appear to have emerged. On that note, it is, I'll cross my fingers here, 50 minutes past the hour of 1 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
The Justice Department says there are even more documents it will have to sift through before it completes its release of the Epstein files. That story and more coming up at 2 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Ken Weaver, it looks like we've beaten our gremlins into submission. Bell K took a big ball peen hammer and was able to fix everything.
Yeah, you should have seen him, man.
You have no idea how close to true that almost became.
I don't think you've really tried everything until you hit a piece of technology to see if you can make it work again.
Right.
I have been through, and my apologies, because while we're working through all that, it's if there's nothing we can do about it sometimes, and we just have to. Sometimes we just have to talk it through on the air.
You just got to keep going.
Yeah, I remember. When I was at Fox, I was in the studio one day, and we had this show called Weekend Live that I used to host, and it was on Saturday. And the whole idea of Weekend Live was it was live shot after live shot after live shot after live shot. I would come on and I would say, the worldwide resources of Fox News are standing by. This is Weekend Live, and then I would do the show, and we would hit a live shot right off the bat.
Right.
And then we'd go to another and another and another, and we just bam, 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 bam. Well, and all of that was true. Well, one day I came in to do it, and I set up the whole thing, and we went to the first live shot, and nothing happened. And they just stayed on me. And I hear, we have these little earpieces, that all the television people have those little earpieces where the director or the producer can talk to you. And they said, go to the next story. I said, okay. So I said, well, apparently we're having a technical difficulty. Let me move on. And I introduced the next story, which was also, of course, a live report, and nothing happened. Nothing happened. And so I thought, well, I don't know what to do about this. And they hear in my ear, go on to the next story. And I did the third intro, and again, nothing happened. Anytime they tried to go to a live remote, they couldn't get it to work. And I said, well, at this point, when you do 3, you sort of have to just toss to a commercial break and hope you can straighten it out in that period of time when you're in a commercial break. I said, apparently we're having some difficulty. Let's take a commercial break. We'll be back in just a moment. And I said to the audience, you might want to stay around because when television goes bad, it can be very entertaining. And we went to the break, and it turns out there was a piece of equipment that had gotten wet, and none of the live shots were going to work. So it was, those things do happen, and you just have to persevere.
You just got to keep going, man.
That's right. Well, it's time now to keep going with Ken Weaver in the news at 2 o'clock.
Two o'clock on the dot. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Got the full forecast coming up in 5 minutes. The Justice Department says there's even more documents it's going to have to sift through before completing the release of the Epstein files. ABC News national correspondent Stephen Portnoy has the latest.
The Justice Department now says the FBI and the Manhattan U.S. Attorney's Office have uncovered over 1 million more documents that potentially relate to the Epstein case. The department says attorneys are working around the clock, but it might take a few more weeks to review these documents and make legally required redactions. Critics have said the administration has been too slow to release the Epstein files and has wrongly blacked out the names of government officials and of potential co-conspirators referenced by them in internal emails.
The trial of Kilmar Abrego Garcia will not start as planned next month in Nashville. A federal judge scheduling a January 28th hearing to review claims of selective prosecution. Garcia charged with transporting undocumented migrants after a Tennessee traffic stop. The court will decide if those charges stand or get thrown out. Sean Diddy Combs wants out of prison fast. His lawyers urging a federal appeals court to order his immediate release and reverse his conviction on prostitution-related charges or direct his trial judge to lighten his 4-year sentence. The lawyers arguing Sean Combs was also sentenced on the charges on which he was acquitted ABC's Olivia Rubin has more.
Essentially what they're arguing is that Combs, these activities that were alleged during the trial were all protected by the First Amendment. The lawyers are arguing that those who participated in the so-called freak-offs, including Combs's girlfriends at the time and those third parties, that they were willing participants, that they were all sort of doing this together. It was everyone's First Amendment protected activity, and that's in part the reason why the conviction should be set aside.
The Powerball jackpot estimated to be $1.7 billion, making it one of the largest in the lottery game's history. And with a jackpot that size, turnout for ticket buying is expected to be very high as well. Will that impact your odds of winning? We turn to Professor Tim Chartier, a Davidson College professor of mathematics and computer science, to tell us if any of us have a chance.
Once the lottery tops $1 billion, people come out of the woodwork to start buying those tickets. So the chances are that it'll be 50% or higher, and with the holidays, it's likely to be higher than 50%, so even better than a coin flip.
Now the next drawing is tonight. That's the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
It is 6 minutes past the hour of 2 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7. Brian Wilson in the chair for Chad Benson. You're listening to the Chad Benson Show. Chad will be back after the holidays. In the meantime, I'm with you till 3 o'clock. And then I believe Matt Murphy will... Am I correct? Matt Murphy is coming in today,
Yeah,
right?
he's in today.
He's in at 3 o'clock. He'll rock along at 3 to carry on all the way till 7. Hope you're having a great holiday. Hope that everything is coming your way and that you got all your packages wrapped and that things are poised for a good Christmas holiday tomorrow with friends and family. You know, in this country right now, you have politicians that sometimes are not very popular. You have presidents that, you know, their popularity goes up and down. But there is no institution that has lower approval ratings than the news media. The news media are not viewed very charitably by most Americans right now. A lot of Americans don't believe that they get the straight stuff anymore and that the media are corrupt. Here's an example of why that is. Over at CBS, now, boy, when I was growing up, there was only one network that you watched. And you watched the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite. And that's the way it is. And it was, it had integrity, and people trusted him. They trusted Uncle Walter. And, there was especially in the wake of Watergate, a real belief that the media were working for you and me, and that they were straight shooters. I don't know if they were or not, but that was the opinion of most Americans. They would watch the news. There was no show on television that was ranked higher in ratings or respected more than 60 Minutes. Back when I was growing up, you didn't miss 60 Minutes. But nowadays, people look at CBS askance. They look at it and they say, I'm not sure I can believe anything that I see. In fact, Fox News is very, very close to taking over as the preeminent source of information in America today. And the rest are beginning to sputter and falter. CBS News is a hollow shell of what it once was in its day. The other day, they have somebody brought in as the new editor-in-chief. Her name is Bari Weiss, B-A-R-I Weiss. She's the newly named editor-in-chief of CBS News. The owners of CBS News are trying to change things. They're trying to bring some respect back to the network and its news product, and they brought in this woman to sort of revamp things. Well, part of what she is doing is she's going back and she's looking at, how do stories get on the air? And let's make sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure that what we put on the air is accurate and fair and balanced. Noble concepts, all of them. 60 Minutes had a story that was about the El Salvador prison, where some of the people who were arrested by the Trump administration, who were in this country illegally, who had criminal charges pending against them in other countries, were exported to this prison in El Salvador and held there. And some of the people there have reportedly told CBS News and 60 Minutes that they were abused and it was a horrible place. Well, prison is supposed to be a horrible place. I'm sorry it was a bad experience for you, but what you were in this country illegally. You were violating the law in this country. And you had already violated the law, and you had charges pending against you. So, the Trump administration said, send them to that El Salvador prison. I think Kilmar Abrego Garcia went to that prison for a period of time. And so the story was not going to be very favorable to the Trump administration. But the bottom line is, the editor-in-chief, this Bari Weiss, looked at the story and said, you know what? That story's not ready for reporting yet. And so we don't report things that aren't ready to be reported. And you don't have this lockdown. You don't have this lockdown. There are missing elements to this story. So she yanked the story. As in the news parlance, they call it spiking a story. Spiking a story doesn't necessarily mean that it's dead forever. It simply means that, in the opinion of the people, sometimes it's the lawyer, sometimes it's your editors, sometimes it's the people above you, look at the story and say, you know what? We think there's more reporting to be done on this, and we're gonna hold off putting this out. So it happens. But at CBS, and especially at 60 Minutes, the wailing and the gnashing of teeth. Oh, look, they're interfering with our editorial integrity. Well, they didn't have any integrity to begin with. But second of all, then they're wailing and well, you can't stop us from printing the news. Well, yeah, you can if it's not completely reported. I mean, so she yanked it, and guess what? What happened? It didn't appear on 60 Minutes, but as they, this is from AP. I laugh at their assessment, their headline here. 60 Minutes segment on Trump immigration policy accidentally airs online. In other words, somebody said, well, we may not be able to put it out on 60 Minutes, but somehow somebody at CBS leaked it, is what happened. They say accidentally? No. That kind of stuff doesn't happen accidentally. So, what was the problem with this particular story? Oh, the problems are myriad. Let's see if I can. Here it is. Yeah, this is a story from Axios. CBS News editor-in-chief Barry Weiss wants to make changes. Why it matters? To give the more streamlined hierarchy and a set of processes across shows and news-gathering teams that are intended to prevent disparate editorial procedures and standards. In other words, we want to have a standard for journalism that meets certain criteria, and if it doesn't meet that criteria, then it's not going on. Now, look, as somebody who spent, a lot of years in television news, some of it on the network level, I have had editors come to me and say, this story's not ready. We really need some more work on this story. And I never took it as an offense to say, okay, what do you think we need to explore? And sometimes I agreed, sometimes I didn't agree, but the bosses are the bosses and the lawyers are the lawyers, and you have to toe the line. You got to make sure that the reporting is done to certain standards, and if they feel like the standards are not being met, it is certainly within the rights of the managers of a newsroom to say that story is going to be held for now. The changes come in the wake of controversy that saw her pulling a story from the Trump administration deportation of Venezuelan immigrants to an El Salvador prison, according to a source familiar with her plans. Listen to this. One of the main reasons Weiss cited for pulling the segment was that the 60 Minutes team didn't include any of the 3 on-the-record statements from the White House, the State Department, and the Department of Homeland Security that were provided to CBS News. According to a source familiar with the 60 Minutes team's correspondence with the administration, journalists reached out to press officials at the White House, the State Department, and the DHS, all of which provided comment to CBS News ahead of the piece's anticipated run date. None of those comments, which varied in length and substance, were included in the piece, which had been made public from a recording that was distributed via an app, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so when you report something, you're supposed to tell all sides of the story. I know that when I was a reporter in television news, the only time I ever got yelled at by my managing editor, who was Britt Hume, was when he felt like I wasn't telling all sides of a story. Now, sometimes you make decisions for time when you're writing a story, but you got to fit it all in, and you got to get all sides of the story. Difficult to do sometimes when you've been given a very complex story and 1:20 to tell it, but nonetheless, those are the limitations of the medium, and you have to do it. And so, there were times when I have to go back and rewrite it, or reorganize the material in a way where it seemed to be a little bit more balanced. It's not an unusual thing. It happens in newsrooms every day, except apparently over at CBS, where they don't like anybody telling them your reporting is not complete. They went to the White House and to the State Department and the Department of Homeland Security and asked for comments, and they chose not to put any of that in the story. Well, how can you do a story that is critical of the Trump immigration process, not have the Trump side of the story? That's not complete reporting. That's incomplete reporting. That smells like a hit piece, not good journalism. So what happened? Well, she said you can't run it, and then in defiance, I would say, of Barry Weiss, who is in charge of CBS News, they found a way to leak it online. Really egregious. Somebody's head needs to roll over that. They say, oh, it accidentally got out. I don't believe that for a moment. I believe somebody decided they were going to go around the management of the news department, and they were going to do it on their own. But this is why people don't have any confidence in the news media. It's why people, by and large, say they don't feel like they're getting straight information from the mainstream media. She's trying to turn around an organization that has been very left-leaning for a very, very, very long time, and she's trying to make it more balanced. There have been some talk she'd like to hire Brett Baer as her anchor, but I don't think Brett Baer's available because I think he's under contract. But she's trying to do what she can to make the reporting of news at CBS what it was in its day. The definitive place to go for news and information in a fair and balanced way. We're going to hear this side. You're going to hear this side. Sometimes, by the way, there are more than two sides to a story. There can be 3 or 4 sides to the story. You just have to look at individual story and decide. But you can't just tell one side of the story. That's not fair and balanced reporting. Look, I mean, you're saying, well, that's rich coming from you, Wilson. You put your opinion in every day. Well, that's a different thing. When I was a journalist, I tried to adhere to the basic rules of journalism, which are you go out and you tell the story in a fair and balanced way. You say this person believes this and this person believes that, and you put them together and you let the audience decide. You decide. We report, you decide. We'll give you all the facts. You make your own determination about it. I think it's brilliant. That's what journalism was supposed to be. But this story, based on what I'm seeing and what I can see from the outside here, did not meet those standards. You told one side of the story because you hate Trump. And anything Trump, we've got to be against. She's got her hands full here. And she's trying to change things. And here's what I will say, my prediction in this particular case. Mark my word, she'll make some changes. And she'll make some significant changes. And she'll start to turn what we can turn the battleship around, and then she will, for some reason or another, we may never know the real reason, she'll no longer be with CBS News. And the reason is that people who have put her in charge want change, but change is hard, and change is traumatic in an organization. Big change is really, really controversial and traumatic. And at the end of the day, agents of change generally do not last very long in the news business. You come in with a mandate to change things, but will the bosses stick with her as she really has to do the tough work of actually changing things? My prediction is they won't stick with her for very long. And that's sad. That's very sad. 20 minutes now past the hour of 2 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7.
The near daily release of Epstein files may just be the tip of the iceberg. The Department of Justice this afternoon says it found more. We'll get into the details at 2:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Hey, there you go. 24 minutes past the hour of 2 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7. Merry Christmas to you. Hope you're having a great holiday and you're going to get to spend some time with friends and loved ones tomorrow. Ken Weaver, can you believe that it's been 5 years since the 2nd Avenue bombing?
I cannot.
I cannot. It seems like the time, but it was 2020, and I remember getting up on Christmas morning and hearing, I don't know, I had to look at my phone, and I saw bomb exploded on 2nd Avenue in downtown Nashville, and I went to the studio, and Dan Mandis went to the studio, and we were on the air, I think, all the way from early Christmas morning till like 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yes.
Reporting on all that. And, you know, I will say, as reporting goes, I think our reporting that day, I'll put it up against anybody's reporting. We were way ahead on that story. We broke stuff that morning and throughout that morning that I didn't see in other places for a couple of days.
Yeah, somehow we were able to obtain the audio that was emitting from the
RV, right?
The RV,
right. For those who don't know, a crazy man took an RV down to 2nd Street and set up a bomb, and it went off in the middle of early in the morning on Christmas Day, right down there on 2nd Street next to the AT&T data center, and it knocked out, I mean, a number of buildings in that area. It was a significant bomb, and before it went, there were recordings that were emanating from the RV. It was it was playing the song Downtown by Petula Clark.
Yeah.
And warning people to step away, that there was a bomb that was about to go off and they needed to clear the area.
Yeah, it was counting it down.
Yeah. People who lived in those buildings, you know, got out. It seemed like they heard the warning from that, because it was very loud, and they got out. We had all of that kind of stuff, I think, a long time before other news organizations put it together. I'm not criticizing. We just got real lucky, but our reporting was pretty solid that morning. And of all the days that I've been in broadcasting, I mark that as the day that I walked away feeling really good about the level of reporting we had done on a very, very big story. And now they have reopened, finally, 5 years after that, they have reopened 2nd Avenue, although a number of the buildings are still boarded up down there. And there's still work to be done. How frustrating it must be to own a business down there and have that street blocked off for all this time. You know, it ruins some
that
people.
Real estate ain't cheap, and if you're paying rent, you better be selling some product.
Yeah, I don't know how they worked it all out, but Nashville Mayor Freddie O'Connell acknowledged the frustrating, slow recovery process. This is hard. If you go up the block to the point of the greatest impact, some of this was truly devastating. And some, apparently, according to the mayor, says that some property owners are still fighting with insurance companies to resolve claims, and the city cannot force them to rebuild, and the insurance companies are dragging their feet. But they have opened the street, thank goodness, finally, and some of the businesses are now back open after being closed for 5 long years. Oh, my goodness, what a mess. And then there's this story about that I think it makes me angry. The bomber's name was Anthony Warner, and he was crazy. He apparently told people that he was building bombs in his RV at his home, and and somebody went to the police, and the Metropolitan Police followed up on it in only the most cursory of ways. They went to the house and they knocked on the door, and nobody came to the door, and they said, oh, well. And that's the end of it. They never followed up. They never look, for example, to monitor the house or do any surveillance on the house. They never did anything to find out whether or not the person that was alleged to be building the bomb was somebody who was capable of building a bomb, or whether he was mentally stable. They didn't do any of that. And they had some apparent doubts about the quality of the information. But when somebody tells you there's a guy that's going to build a bomb, he's building bombs in his RV at his house, you've got to pull out all the stops to find out whether that is A, number one, true, or number B, not true. And they knocked on the door, and nobody came to the door, and they said, oh, well, and that was the end of it. There was an opportunity to have stopped that, and it was a failure of the Metropolitan Police Department that they did not do their due diligence in this particular matter. It's 2:30 now on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Got the full forecast coming up in 5 minutes. The near daily release of new Jeffrey Epstein files may just be the tip of the iceberg. Suddenly this afternoon, the Justice Department claims it has uncovered more than 1 million additional documents tied to the case out of New York. So far, only 100,000 files have been released to the public. Officials are reviewing this new material, saying they've got to determine what can be released under federal law and court orders, and it could take weeks. Stephen Portnoy says it comes as the Department of Justice has come under fire for how it's handling the process.
The Epstein files contain a large number of redactions, blacking out not just the identities of victims, but also the names of prosecutors and other federal officials, making it difficult, if not impossible, to determine who was saying what in internal emails. The top Democrat on the House Oversight Committee says one document released so far should prompt a new investigation into why a child pornography complaint about Epstein to the FBI seemingly went unanswered in 1996.
Here in Tennessee, 3 years after a deadly road rage shooting on I-24 downtown, the killer of Chris Sponhorst remains at large. Sponhorst was driving home when someone opened fire on his truck near downtown Nashville. Police believe the shooter was in a black Kia Optima that kept going. Crime Stoppers offering a $23,000 reward for information. And police in Pennsylvania investigating that nursing home explosion near Philadelphia.
There was originally 20 injured. We have 19 still hospitalized, one in critical condition.
Yeah, that's Fire Department Chief Kevin DiPolito at today's press conference there at Bristol Township. Rescuers rushed in to pull victims from windows, stairwells, and elevators there at the Silver Lake Nursing Home in Bucks County. As far as determining what the cause,
until we excavate that area and remove the walls and roofs that collapsed, we won't have any idea what may have occurred in there. We're hoping to make significant progress today.
That's the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Selling your home can be stressful, but it doesn't have to be. Get a guaranteed offer from Mark Spain Real Estate. There are no showings, no open houses, no stress. Work with the #1 real estate team in the U.S. and close with confidence. Go to markspain.com today.
Hey, this is Pastor Al, and join us on Super Talk 99.7, Sunday evenings from 7 to 8. We're going to look at the news from a biblical perspective.
There you go. Merry Christmas to you and yours. I'm Brian Wilson filling in for Chad Benson. You're listening to The Chad Benson Show on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I want to talk about the really, tremendous news we keep getting about the economy. Remember when, we were in the middle of the throes of the last election and everybody was saying, well, Donald Trump will destroy the economy. And everybody, when they started doing the tariffs, the economy is going to reel and it's going to be runaway inflation and the economy's just going to be in the toilet. None of that's happening. And the news that keeps coming out seems to be, for the most part, pretty positive. Wall Street Journal today has a pretty good story about that. Have you heard the latest news had to do with the GDP growing at a tremendous rate, up 4.3%, defying all expectations. The Wall Street Journal writes, the U.S. economy keeps powering ahead despite dire predictions. The U.S. economy continues to power through the trade and immigration shocks of 2025, defying widespread expectations of a slowdown or even a recession, and blowing past other developed countries. Donald Trump keeps saying, you know what? We got the hottest country. He's talking about the economy is hot. Our economy is booming and doing much better than anybody anticipated. I mean, how many times did we hear Democrats say that Donald Trump is going to destroy the economy? It just hasn't emerged. The reason Americans keep spending money despite their concerns, AI investment and household consumption, particularly in higher income Americans, accounted for nearly 70% growth in the third quarter. We often talk about the $30 trillion American economy as being dynamic and a resilient beast, and the gross domestic product data from the third quarter was no exception. There you go. Well, I mean, look, I think that's true. I've always believed that the United States economy, the American economy, and the system of our economic system that was set up by our founding fathers, really is such a resilient creature that if you just get out of the way, the economy will do fine. When you start messing around with things, then, the economy will falter. And we saw that by the Biden administration. They pumped way too much money into the economy and during COVID. And when they did that, the inflation went to 9.1%. Now inflation's at 3%. We'd like to see it at 2. It'll probably get there, but right now it's at 3, which is not runaway inflation. Certainly not the highest we've ever seen, and certainly way better than what we had under the Biden regime. So inflation is relatively okay, pretty good. Our gross domestic product is growing. People are getting more money in their pockets because they're being paid a little better. So wages are up and inflation is relatively under control, and gross domestic product, people are spending money. And so the economy is perking along in pretty good order. And none of that has taken into account what's on the horizon. I'll get into that in just a moment, but I want to hit this point. Almost everyone, according to the Wall Street Journal, got Trump's tariffs wrong, though the most dire predictions were made before he backed off his most extreme policies. Instead of recession, the U.S. economy expanded in somewhat unexpected ways. The growth didn't come from a boom in manufacturing. I think that will come. Let's come back to that in just a moment. But from consumers who were willing to spend money and buy a record-breaking stock market boom. Well, why is the stock market booming? Because it likes what it sees in the economy. Okay, all right. Now, this whole thing about well, we didn't see a boom in manufacturing. Well, come on. It's been 11 months since he took office and started imposing tariffs. Do you know how long it takes to build factories? Do you know how long it takes to move manufacturing from overseas to this country? That will happen, and that will happen in short order, but it takes a little time to make those kinds of transitions. The president has always been upfront about that. He's always been very clear. Yeah, we're in a period of transition, and there's going to be some, a little time before all of the policies really start to kick in, but we're going to see that, I think, in 2026. I think we're going to see a lot of things in 2026. So does the Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent.
Well, look, I think Americans are going to feel it, and everything we've done in the past year is setting the table for a great 2026. And we inherited a mess. You had to stabilize costs. Real wages are up. I call it, I'm going to talk about it in my speech tonight, the 3 I's that cause the problems we've seen. Immigration, interest rates, and inflation. Immigration, the mass unfettered immigration, 10, 20 million people coming across the border, push down working wages and cause housing prices to go up, rental prices to go up, cause the scarcity. President Trump has closed the border. 2 million people have gone home, so check on immigration. Bond market had the best year it's had since 2020. Interest rates are down, mortgage rates are down. We're starting to see life in the housing market, and rental rates are down about 5%. I expect they'll be down 10 or 15 from the peak. And then 3, inflation, we're working on that. The energy prices are down. Gasoline nationally is now below $3 a gallon. It's below $2 in a couple of states. So I think we're on a very good track on inflation. And I'm also the IRS commissioner as well as the Treasury Secretary. And I can see that the president's signature initiatives in the One Big Beautiful Bill, and I tell you, he fought harder than anyone for these. No tax on tips, no tax on the overtime, no tax on Social Security, auto deductibility. That the bill was passed in July. Working Americans didn't change their withholding, so they're going to be getting very large refunds in the first quarter. So I think we're going to see $150 billion of refunds, which could be between $1,000, $2,000 per household. Then they'll change their withholding, and they'll get a real increase in their wages. So I think 2026 is going to be a very good year.
I do too. I think we are poised to see our economy explode. It's already stabilized, and I think we'll see it explode. Now, are there some little things that are troublesome? And quite frankly, I understand there may be people out there who say, Wilson, I don't know what you're talking about. Times are tough. I'm having a hard time making ends meet. I get that. Not everybody, when I'm talking about the economy writ large, sure, there are people for whom it's not working, and there are people for whom it is working. I get that. But overall, when you average it all out, the economy is stabilized, and we are poised for a huge boom in 2026. When those tax cuts, what do we know about tax cuts? Do you remember the Reagan years? We saw tax cuts, and immediately once those tax cuts start to be felt, and people had money in their pocket that they didn't have before, the economy surged. One of the highest periods of good economic news that we've ever seen was during the Reagan years. So that's on the horizon. And I really do believe that when people have more money in their pockets, when they get that $1,000 or $2,000 refund, that's gonna help the economy in a big way. There are a couple of things, however, that are concerning. Number one, the cost of beef. People say, "Well, have you tried to buy a steak lately?" Yeah, I have, and I know it's expensive. And the bottom line is, though, that's probably going to change. Give it a little time. What happened is there were drastic reductions in cattle herds for various and sundry reasons, and it just takes a while to rebuild the herds and get the stock up to where you have beef in abundance again. So it's a supply thing, and that will in time work itself out. But that takes time. You can't rebuild a herd overnight. Housing is another problem. But I really believe that this is the one thing that Trump can do. Trump looks at things outside the box. He comes up with different ideas than perhaps have been proposed before. And if you're smart, you listen to him because he understands the economy better than most presidents we've ever had serve as president. He really gets it. He understands it in a way that others do not. Here is Kevin Haslett White House Economic Council leader from the front lawn of the White House talking about what's going to happen in the coming year to try to make this other stubborn problem get better. The high cost of housing.
And then the other thing is that we've got lots of great new ideas that we're going to put before the American people this year to make their lives better. The president mentioned in his economic speech from over here at the White House that we've got like everybody in the whole cabinet working on trying to get housing to be more affordable. We're going to have a plan, a big plan to announce sometime soon in the new year that's going to be really good news for the American people who feel like it's just not affordable to buy a home anymore. Don't forget that under Joe Biden, the average mortgage payment for the typical middle-class family who are buying for the first time a home went up by $14,000 a year. $14,000 a year because of inflation and higher interest rates. And we've got a plan that's going to make that go almost completely in reverse. Already, we've reduced that monthly mortgage payment by $3,000.
Well, let me ask you about that, because one of the ideas that keeps getting batted around and mentioned here in Washington and beyond is this idea of a portable mortgage. That a lot of people, if you got a 3% mortgage, you don't want to sell that house and go back out into the market, freeing up that housing maybe for more an entry-level buyer. Could that be part of the conversation, that portable mortgage?
Yeah, we've got a list of things that we're going to present to the president. I expect, break a little news for you, I expect that most of us are going to be down for a big chunk of the week after Christmas at Mar-a-Lago, going through all the plans for next year. And definitely we have a big list of housing ideas that have been vetted very carefully by the cabinet secretaries to present to the president in a week or two. And we'll see which ones he picks.
I think we're on the path to getting that situation resolved. And by the way, interest rates should continue to trickle down, drip, 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 but they'll get lower and lower and lower. So I see things looking pretty good. So hang in there, everybody. I think good times and better times are coming with regard to the economy. Let's call it 49 minutes past the hour of 2 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. It's 54 minutes past the hour of 2 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7. Brian Wilson in for Chad Benson. Coming up next, I think is Dan Manders is in his regular time slot. I think, but beyond that, he's the only other person in his regular time slot today. Matt Murphy is coming up at 3 o'clock. Good afternoon, Matt.
Hello, Mr. Wilson. Merry Christmas to you and yours.
I know. Are you excited?
I am quite excited. There's a lot of things going on. I mean, obviously, the holiday season is a time of reflection. You know, you reach out to friends you haven't talked to in a long time. You find people in your life that you maybe have gone absent for a period of time. And it's a time of change, for me at least, because we're moving into that new house, which I'm very excited
I know.
about.
Yeah, we were talking the other day on the phone about your new place. And by the way, I got to see some pictures of it. Wow, man, it's a great looking place.
Well, no, we're very excited. I took a page out of the Wilson playbook, and that is find the nicest house you can in the middle of nowhere and move there.
That's what I've done for sure.
I thought Watertown was way out there until I found a place in Mount Pleasant, Brian. And
listen, I think you'll love it every night though when you go home. It'll be there. You know, it's a beautiful home. It really is.
Well, thank you.
Congratulations on that. So a lot of stuff going on. I'd like to talk to you briefly about your thoughts on the Epstein matter, which, it has been a lot of nothing as far as I can tell.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of nothing. And my prediction was that there was going to be something in this quote-unquote treasure trove of information for everyone to hate, right? Because
Right.
I think we've gotten to a point where everyone has decided what they believe is in there.
I think you're right.
And if what they've decided is in there isn't or is altered in any way,
they don't believe it.
They don't believe it. They're just going
Right.
to scream conspiracy.
Well, and you unless you can release every single document without redactions, people are always going to say, well, what's in the redactions? Oh, what did you not release because it's classified? There's a lot of things. You just got to wonder, if you have doubts about the veracity of the information that's coming out, anything that gets redacted or held back, even if it's for a legitimate reason, gives people an excuse to say, I don't think we've heard the entire story.
Well, and what is most disingenuous to me, the very Congress that passed this law in the manner that they did, that allowed for redactions in the manner that they did, or they're now screaming, holy hell about, oh, look at all these redactions. Well, you allowed for the redactions that was in the law to protect the victims, and you gave them wiggle room to redact some of these other names. So what are you complaining about at this point?
Yeah, we're just doing what Congress asked us to do.
Right.
Yeah,
right. So I don't believe, I understand the serious nature of the allegations against some of those.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it is a story that I think has reached a magnitude that it does not deserve. And there's a lot of people to blame for the level of magnitude that it has reached. But sadly, it is overwhelming other stories that we, in my opinion, ought to be focusing on.
Yeah, I agree with you. 1,000%. I don't know how you resolve that matter to everyone's satisfaction. There are going to be, no matter what comes out, there are always going to be some people who think we just will never hear the entire story.
Yeah, the entire tale.
Very quickly, I want to end on something. Were you, as I was when I was growing up, a big fan of the late Paul Harvey?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. Yes,
I mean, wasn't he the best?
Paul Harvey. Yes,
such a talented guy. Well, for the holidays at my church, we put on a little Christmas program like many churches do, and they asked me to do a reading of a Paul Harvey thing that I, quite frankly, was not familiar with, but I did it, and I've come to really love it, and I want to end the show with it here today, with your permission. But apparently, he never did find out who the original author of this thing was. It was a mystery to him, but he did it many years around the Christmas holidays, year after year after year, and it became a thing that people really loved. Have you ever heard the story of The Man and the Birds?
I don't know that I have.
Well, stand by, if you will.
Let's do it.
Because I'd like to close out with that. Again, Paul Harvey never really found out who wrote it, but it's called The Man and the Birds. The man I'm going to tell you about was not a Scrooge. He was a kind, decent, mostly good man, generous to his family and upright in his dealings with other men. But he just didn't believe in all that incarnation stuff that the churches proclaim at Christmas time. It just didn't make sense, and he was too honest to pretend otherwise. He just couldn't swallow the Jesus story about God coming to earth as a man. He told his wife, "I'm truly sorry to distress you, but I'm not going to be going to church with you this Christmas Eve." He said he would feel like a hypocrite, and he would much rather just stay home. But he would wait up for them, so he stayed, and they went to the midnight service. Shortly after the family drove away in the car, snow began to fall. Then he went to the window to watch the flurries getting heavier and heavier, and then he went back to his fireside chair and began to read his newspaper. Minutes later, he was startled by a thudding sound, then another, and then another. At first, he thought somebody must be throwing snowballs against the living room window. But when he went to the front door to investigate, instead, he found a flock of birds huddled outside miserably in the snow. They had been caught in the storm, and in a desperate search for shelter, they had tried to fly through his large landscape window. That what was making the sound. Well, he couldn't let the poor creatures just lie there and freeze, so he remembered the barn where his children kept their pony. That would provide a warm shelter. All he would have to do is direct the birds into the shelter. So quickly, he put on his coat and galoshes and trampled through the deepening snow to the barn. He opened the doors wide and turned on a light so the birds would know the way in. But the birds did not come in. So he figured that food would entice them, and he hurried back to the house and fetched some breadcrumbs. He sprinkled them on the snow, making a trail of breadcrumbs to the yellow-lighted, wide-open doorway of the stable. But to his dismay, the birds ignored the breadcrumbs. The birds continued to flap around helplessly in the snow. He tried catching them, but he could not. He tried shooing them into the barn by walking around and waving his arms. Instead, they scattered in every direction except into the warm, lighted barn. And that's when he realized they were afraid of him. To them, he reasoned, I am a strange and terrifying creature. If only I could think of some way to let them know that they can trust me. That I am not trying to hurt them, but trying to help them. But how? Any move he made tended to frighten them and confuse them. They just would not follow. They would not be led or shooed because they feared him. He thought to himself, if only I could be a bird and mingle with them and speak their language, then I could tell them not to be afraid. Then I could show them the way to the safe, warm barn. But I would have to be one of them so they could see and hear and understand. At that very moment, the church bells began to ring. The sound reached his ears above the sound of the winds. He stood there listening to the bells pealing the glad tidings of Christmas. And he sank to his knees in the snow. Merry Christmas, everyone. Try to remember the reason for the season.